I never believed a single moment could ruin a life, until the night my boss shook my hand, smiled like a serpent, and told me I was no longer a good fit for the company. Funny how calmly he said it, how gently, like he wasn't about to burn 6 years of my work to the ground. My name is Mara Lorne, and for most of my adult life, I worship my job. I was the youngest project director at Harrington & Vale, a billion-dollar consulting firm where loyalty meant nothing and results meant everything. Not that I understood that last part, not then. I was naive. I thought merit protected you. I thought hard work built shields. I thought the people applauding me in boardrooms actually cared. Then I learned the truth. Not only did they fire me, they framed me. It started 3 months before that handshake of death. I remember walking into the office at 6 a.m., like I always did, iced coffee in one hand, laptop bag in the other. The building smelled like money and cold air. Everything polished, everything engineered to look powerful. And standing by the elevator was Nathan Cole, my boss, my mentor, and the man who would eventually destroy everything I loved. He gave me that smile, the one that never reached his eyes. "Mara," he said, "you're early? Again?" "Trying to get ahead of the Q4 deliverables," I answered. He chuckled. "You work too hard." I took it as a compliment. Now I know it was a warning. Because around that time, the company had landed the biggest client in its history, Solomar Tech, a rising AI conglomerate drowning in scandals. My job was to clean their mess, rebuild their public image, and design an ethics framework that didn't make them look like a threat to humanity. It was the kind of project that built careers, or buried them. Nathan told me he wanted me to lead it. Told me I was the face of the new generation. Told me this was my chance to prove myself to the board. But the very same week he praised me. My access logs started changing. Files opening at times I wasn't online. Reports modified under my credentials. Documents I'd never touched showing my name in the revision history. At first, I blamed the system. Then I blamed fatigue. Then I blamed myself. I had no idea someone else was doing it. I should have noticed it that morning when I entered my office. My desk was slightly off. Papers shifted, my chair too far from where I always left it. But when you're exhausted, you rationalize anything, and exhaustion was all I felt. By October, I was running on caffeine and adrenaline. Solomar Tech's executives demanded daily revisions. Every one of them lied through their teeth. Every meeting felt like a chess match with billionaires who smiled while calculating how to bury me alive. But I kept going. I had to. This project was my future. Then came the night everything snapped. A Thursday, late, too late. The kind of late where the building is empty and every shadow looks like it's whispering something. I was finishing a 120-page strategy deck when an email popped up from Nathan. "Need you in the conference room. Urgent." No signature, no explanation. My stomach tightened, but I grabbed my laptop and went. When I opened the conference room door, he wasn't alone. 2 board members sat at the table. They didn't smile. Nathan didn't either. "Mara," he said, "please sit." I did, and instantly regretted it. He slid a folder across the table. "We need to discuss your misconduct." My blood froze. "Misconduct?" I whispered. The board member on the left cleared his throat like he'd been waiting years to ruin someone's life. "You've been altering Solomar Tech's compliance reports, removing sensitive information, misrepresenting risk assessments." I shook my head. "That's not possible. Nathan lifted his hand, silencing me. "Everything is documented. Access logs, timestamps, revision histories, all under your name." Something inside my chest cracked. "I didn't do that," I said, my voice trembling despite every ounce of strength I had left. "Someone's using my credentials." I expected shock, concern, maybe even a hint of humanity. Instead, the board member leaned forward. "Mara, the company has decided to terminate your employment effective immediately." The ceiling hummed. The AC buzzed. My heartbeat thundered. It felt surreal, like the moment before a car crash, when time stretches thin and the world goes silent. I stared at Nathan. He stared back like I was a stranger. "You can leave your badge with security," he said. "We'll escort you out." Escort? Like I was a criminal. I wanted to scream, wanted to grab his perfect silk tie and ask him why. Why he ruined me. Why he pretended to mentor me. Why he watched me break myself for this company and still threw me off a cliff. But then he delivered the final blow. "We're also conducting a legal review of your actions. If liability is found, we may pursue charges." Charges. For crimes I didn't commit. I walked out of that room numb, like my veins were filled with ice water. I don't remember dropping off my badge. I don't remember driving home. I barely remember breathing. But I do remember the moment my numbness cracked into rage. It was 3:12 a.m. I was sitting on my apartment floor, surrounded by files, crying harder than I had in my entire life. And then, my phone buzzed. A message from a block number. One sentence. They did the same thing to me. I stared at it, shaking. Then another message followed. "If you want answers, meet me tomorrow. Alone." I didn't know it yet, but this stranger was the first thread in a web far darker than I imagined. One that led straight back to Nathan Cole, to the board, and to secrets worth millions. They thought firing me would bury me. They didn't know they had just given me motive. And when a woman has nothing left
to lose, she becomes dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And I was ready to burn their kingdom to ash. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying every conversation, every meeting, every moment when Nathan pretended to guide me, while he was sharpening the knife he'd slide between my ribs. By morning, grief had hardened into something sharper, colder, cleaner. Revenge isn't a plan at first. It's a pulse, and mine was beating violently. The message came again at 7:04 a.m. No cops, no recordings, parking lot of Redwood Mall, 11 a.m. I almost ignored it. It smelled like a trap. But then, what didn't? My whole life was a trap I hadn't seen coming. So I went. The Redwood Mall parking lot was empty, sun-bleached, and quiet enough that every footstep echoed. I parked far from the entrance and waited, gripping my steering wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. At 11:06, a figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. A woman, mid-30s, short dark hair, wearing jeans, a leather jacket, and an expression carved from exhaustion. She walked to my car, tapped the window once, then stood back. I lowered it halfway. "Are you the one who texted?" She nodded. "Name's Lila." There was something haunted in her eyes, a familiar kind of ruin. I got out slowly. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," she said. "But I figured you might want to know why they did this to you." The cold wind cut across the empty lot, but her words chilled me more. "Start talking," I said. Lila glanced around, then motioned for me to follow her to the far end of the parking structure. She stopped by a concrete wall decorated with old graffiti, as if the ugliness there matched the uglier truth she was about to share. "They did it to me," she said. "Same playbook, same accusations, same investigation that wasn't an investigation at all." I swallowed hard. "You worked at Harrington and Vale?" "For 5 years." She let out a bitter laugh. "Nathan was my boss too." My heart stuttered. "What did he want from you?" "Money," she said bluntly. "Or rather, control of it." She reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. It looked unremarkable, but she held it like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Nathan and the board have a scheme, she continued. They manipulate client data, suppress risk indicators, fabricate compliance certifications. They make companies look cleaner than they are, and they get paid under the table to do it. I felt my jaw tighten. But that's fraud. Federal fraud? She nodded. Exactly. And anyone who gets too close to the truth, they frame them, discredit them, fire them for misconduct. That way, if anything explodes later, the blame lands on the people they've already destroyed. A sickening realization stirred in my stomach. That's why they targeted me, I whispered. I was handling Solimar tech. I had access to all their internal files. All their dirt, she added, and Nathan couldn't risk you stumbling onto the numbers he's been burying. I pressed a hand to my forehead, dizzy with anger. So why tell me this now? Why help me? She hesitated. Then her voice softened. Because I tried to expose them, she said. And they didn't just ruin my career. They almost ruined my life. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with memories too heavy to carry. I lost everything, she said quietly. My job, my savings, my apartment. Even my family started to doubt me. And Nathan, he walked away untouched. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, she pushed the flash drive into my hand. This is my evidence, she said. The documents I collected before they caught on. But I never had enough to make a case. You might. I stared at the drive, feeling its weight. What's on it? Emails, hidden invoices, ghost accounts, backdated compliance certifications. She swallowed. And one file that proves Nathan personally edited the Solimar risk assessments, using your login. My blood iced. He forged my credentials. He's done it before, she said. He'll do it again. I took a step back, overwhelmed. Lila reached out and gripped my arm. You can fight them, she said. But not alone. Then why don't we take this to the authorities? Her laugh was hollow, because the board has friends everywhere. Lawyers, lobbyists, politicians. If you go through traditional channels, you'll be crushed before you get through the door. So what do you suggest? She looked at me with an expression that was equal parts fear and determination. Expose them the way they exposed us. Hit them where they think they're untouchable. Their reputations, their clients, their money. She paused. You're smart, Mara. You're strategic, and you still have access to things they don't know about. What things? Your contacts, your systems knowledge, and... She lowered her voice. The Solimar team trusts you. They don't trust anyone at Harrington and Vale. A dark thought flickered in my mind, dangerous and seductive. Are you asking me to take them down from the outside? I'm asking you, she said softly, to take back your life. A car alarm echoed from a distance, snapping me out of my trance. I closed my fingers around the flash drive. How do I know I can trust you? I asked. You don't, she admitted, but you have nothing left to lose. She turned to walk away, then looked back once. And Mara, they think you're broken right now. That makes you powerful. Then she disappeared around the corner of the parking structure, leaving me alone with a truth I couldn't ignore. Nathan didn't just frame me. He wasn't just corrupt. He was running a criminal operation under the company's polished billion-dollar surface. And I was now holding the first thread that could unravel all of it. I went home, trembling, not from fear, but from the force of everything building inside me. Rage, betrayal, clarity. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Hundreds of files popped up, ledger sheets, fake compliance audits, offshore payment transfers, email threads where Nathan and 2 board members orchestrated the destruction of employees who questioned them. And then I saw it. A folder labeled Mara Risk. My breath hitched. Inside were screenshots, staged documents,
altered timestamps, a fake email chain where I supposedly admitted to hiding Solimar data. The room spun, my stomach twisted, my hands shook violently. This was premeditated, not a mistake, not an accident, not a misunderstanding. They had been planning to destroy me for months. I felt something inside me harden. A piece of me I didn't recognize. A piece that no longer cared about rules or fairness or giving people the benefit of the doubt. They wanted to see me fall? Fine. I would make sure they fell first. The next step wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was strategy. I created a secure offline folder, mirrored Lila's files, and began cross-referencing everything with my own archives. Patterns emerged. Connections strengthened. The story formed itself, piece by piece. Hours passed. The sun set. The city lights flickered on. By midnight, I had enough evidence to bury a dozen executives. But something else happened too. While digging through data, I found an anomaly. A strange communication record between Nathan and a Solimar executive named Evan Reddick. The emails were encrypted, but the subject lines weren't. Re-contract condition, phase 3. Reconfirmation of payment schedule. Re-final clearance, risk suppression. My fingers tingled. Solimar wasn't just a client. They were in on it. This wasn't internal corruption. It was a collaboration, a conspiracy. My pulse hammered as the pieces fell into place. Nathan wasn't just protecting Solimar. He was profiting from them. And in return, Solimar got the clean bill of health they needed to continue their expansion, no matter how many laws they bent or ethics they broke. I leaned back in my chair, breath trembling. They were bigger, smarter, more powerful than I expected. This wasn't a simple revenge story anymore. This was war, and I was walking into it alone. Unless I made a move no one expected. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, found a name I hadn't used in years. Someone I once trusted with my future. Someone who knew Harrington and Vale from the inside. Someone they'd never suspect I would call. My thumb hovered over the number. I exhaled slowly. Then I pressed dial. The line rang once, twice. Then a familiar voice answered. Mara, I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. I need your help, I said. And I think you'll want to hear why. A beat of silence. Tell me.
Everything. I inhaled. And I began. Because this was the moment my revenge transformed from anger into action. The moment I realized I wasn't going to simply expose them, I was going to destroy them, piece by piece, from the inside out. The moment I hung up the phone, I realized there was no turning back, because the person I had called, Caleb Ward, wasn't just an old colleague or a forgotten contact. He was the man I once almost trusted with my whole future before he suddenly left Harrington and Vale without explanation. A disappearance that had always felt suspicious. Like a door slammed shut before I could ask the questions building inside me. But now, as he arrived at my apartment 2 hours later, his face carved with the same quiet anger I carried, I began to understand he hadn't left. He'd escaped. He stepped inside, took in the files scattered across my floor, the evidence glowing on my laptop screen, the half-empty coffee cups that marked the timeline of my unraveling, and he said in a low voice, "They did to you what they tried to do to me." And hearing that was like an emotional earthquake, shaking loose everything I had been holding inside. Because suddenly, the enemy wasn't just Nathan and a handful of corrupt board members. It was an entire machine designed to crush anyone who touched the truth. Caleb explained how he'd uncovered a cluster of shell corporations woven through the company's financial architecture, a spiderweb of offshore accounts tied to Solimar Tech's hidden funds, and how he'd confronted Nathan about it years ago. Only for Nathan to smile and say, "Some things are above your pay grade. before engineering a false audit discrepancy that forced Caleb to resign before he could fight back. We spent hours comparing notes, connecting threads, building a map of corruption that stretched wider than I dreamed, and somewhere in the middle of that, in a moment where exhaustion felt like its own kind of gravity, Caleb looked at me and said, "You're the first person who's gotten this far." And I felt something dangerous rise inside me, determination sharpened to a blade. If Nathan had built a kingdom of lies, then I would turn everyone he trusted into his downfall. The first step was Solomar Tech, because they were Nathan's shield, his silent partner, and the reason he dared to forge my credentials and risk everything. As long as Solomar backed him, he was untouchable. But if we severed that alliance, if we exposed their involvement, if we created even a single crack in their armor, Nathan would crumble. So Caleb and I devised a plan that was equal parts strategy and manipulation, because the truth wasn't enough to win. We needed spectacle, timing, and the perfect pressure point. And that pressure point arrived in the form of an email chain I uncovered at 3 a.m, a conversation between Solomar's VP, Evan Reddick, and a private PR fixer discussing contingency narratives in case the whistleblowing rumors ever broke. That meant Solomar feared exposure. That meant they were vulnerable, and vulnerable enemies are the easiest to break. Caleb contacted a journalist he trusted, someone who owed him a favor, someone who wasn't afraid to poke giants, and we fed her the first drop of poison. A sanitized, untraceable leak that hinted at Solomar's fabricated compliance certifications. Not enough to indict them, but enough to make them sweat. Within 24 hours, Solomar began internal damage control, and Nathan sent a series of frantic emails to the board urging them to contain the situation immediately, which meant our plan was working. While they scrambled, Caleb and I dove deeper, pulling data from old archives, encrypted backups Nathan assumed no one else remembered existed, and then, buried in one of Lila's old drives, we found the key to everything. A video file, grainy but clear enough, showing Nathan and 2 Solomar executives discussing how to falsify risk reports, complete with exact payment amounts and instructions on covering the digital trail. My breath caught when I watched it. Caleb whispered, "This is lethal." And he wasn't wrong. With that video, their entire empire could fall. But releasing it too soon would give them time to retaliate. We needed the perfect moment, the moment they felt untouchable. And that moment came on the day Harrington and Vail held their annual investor summit, an event live-streamed across the country, a celebration of the company's integrity, a parade of polished lies wrapped in PowerPoint slides and applause. Nathan was the keynote speaker. Of course he was. I watched the live stream from my apartment, my laptop perched on a stack of boxed up memories from the life they had taken from me, and there he stood on stage, smiling like the world loved him, talking about ethics, transparency, innovation, every word a blade scraping across my nerves. And when he began his speech, Caleb clicked the button that sent our evidence to every major news outlet, to the SEC, to Solomar's competitors, to dozens of anonymous whistleblowing platforms, and, most beautifully, to the giant screen directly behind Nathan's head. The live stream flickered. The investors murmured. Nathan paused mid-sentence, and then the video played. His voice, his face, his words, his fraud. Exposed in front of the world he believed he controlled. The room exploded in chaos, gasps, shouts, cameras flashing, investors grabbing their phones, board members scrambling like ants poured out of a nest. Nathan turned white, then red, then something beyond color, something primal and terrified, and for the first time since the night he destroyed my life, I saw him for who he truly was. Not a king, not a mastermind, not an untouchable executive, but a coward, drowning in the consequences he never believed would reach him.
As security swarmed the stage and the live stream cut off, my
phone buzzed uncontrollably. Calls, messages, news alerts, but the one that made my chest tighten came from an unknown number. Thank you. You saved us. Lila, her voice shaking, her life no longer owned by their lies. I didn't cry, not yet. Something inside me was still too raw, too electric, too full of fire to break. Within hours, the SEC launched an emergency investigation. Solomar Tech's stock crashed. Harrington and Vale suspended half their board. Arrest warrants were issued. Nathan went into hiding. But hiding isn't escaping. Not when the truth is your shadow. 3 days later, he was found trying to cross the state line, and when I saw his mugshot on the news, sunken eyes, ruined confidence, a man dragged out of his own arrogance, I felt nothing but a cold, quiet satisfaction. Revenge wasn't supposed to feel triumphant. It was supposed to feel like breathing after years underwater. And that's exactly what it felt like. Caleb and I met for coffee the next morning, both of us exhausted, both of us wearing the kind of relief that doesn't show in a smile, but in the way your shoulders finally stop guarding your heart. "So what now?" he asked. For a long moment, I didn't answer. What now? I could disappear, start over, leave this whole nightmare behind. But I knew better. People like Nathan exist everywhere. Systems like Harrington and Vale are built on silencing people like me and Lila and Caleb. If I walked away now, someone else would be destroyed next. So I looked at him, feeling something stronger than fear, stronger than anger, purpose. "Now," I said, "we build something better." He nodded, understanding without needing details, and for the first time in months, I felt the future open instead of collapse. Not because I won, but because I survived. Because I fought back. Because I was no longer the woman crying on her apartment floor surrounded by lies she didn't create. I was the woman who burned down an empire built on secrets. And I wasn't done. Not yet. Because revenge may spark the fire, but justice keeps it burning.